Thank you for coming back to Motorcycle Brothers. I have a special guest, David Marroquin. Thank you, David, for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was fun. Enjoyed riding it, back and forth and doing a little quick service on it and getting the exhaust on. So we look forward to doing some more, having some more fun with these bikes and doing some good little modifications.
Oh, I think the next thing will be the fender eliminator on the Kawasaki ZX12.
Yeah.
She's a pain, right?
It's a little painful, but, we'll get it done. Also very important to do when you're changing the oil is replace this crush washer. These are aluminum. So you have a metal, drain bolt going into an aluminum case. This crush washer is meant to mold to the engine a little bit to keep any oil from coming out. And it's very bendable. So it's very important. It's a cheap piece just to replace every time that you do the oil. We've got a new one over here and we'll be putting that in once we put this drain plug back in. But one of the things that's always good is to kind of warm the bike up just a little bit to get that oil flowing and getting out of, all the areas in the engine. We'll let that drain sit for a little while. What we're gonna do next is we're gonna remove the oil filter. There is a way to get to it from here, but it's very limited, especially if the oil filter is kind of tight on there. What I'd usually do is, I'll sit a rag in here and see if I can reach the oil filter here. But as you can see, my hands are kind of big, makes it a little difficult. So we're gonna remove this bolt here, remove the bolts holding it here in the center, and just pull this fairing back a little bit so that we can access it here through the front and get that off a little bit easier. Just make sure that you always keep the drain pan underneath because there will be oil coming out of that filter when we change it. So we should be able to get this off by hand. You don't want it on there super tight, just pretty much tighten it up, snug it up by hand, and then the heat will actually help that press onto the engine. So we should be able to get this off by hand. If not, we have some little tricks to get that off. So just want to get this under here carefully. On this 2004 Kawasaki ZX12R, we're going to be running AMSOIL 10W40. This is 100% synthetic, so it's good for, higher RPMs, older bikes, higher mileage, stuff like that. It lasts a lot longer. And we're running a high flow HF204, which is the part number for this bike. So this obviously is an aftermarket oil filter. You can run this, a K&N, Kawasaki, whatever your preference is. So in this case, we're going to be running the high flow on this bike today. So here on the right-hand side on the engine case, it'll show you the oil capacity on this bike. If you're just doing an oil change, then it takes 2.5 liters. With the filter removed, it's approximately 2.8 liters and completely dry. So, I mean, you've got absolutely no oil in the engine. Everything's drained out. Sometimes if you're doing an engine case replacement or a clutch replacement, it could take a little bit more. But just to be on the safe side, we're going to go with the full bone dry at 3.6 liters, which is approximately about 3.8 quarts or so. So something else, this is preference. I've always liked to do this. I will fill this with some oil, just a little bit, just to kind of pre-soak it and not just have it bone dry in there and then have the engine circulating it through. So we'll add just a little bit of oil here just to get things going. Let that soak in there. I like to rub it around the seal here and just swish it around some. Let it soak into the internals there. As you can see, that little bit that I poured in there has already been soaked up by the carton filter. So this metal here is just the covering, but all filters have a, you can see in there, that'll just soak it all up. Go ahead and get that on there just hand tight. Perfect.
I'm not a big fan of changing things. I mean, I like motorcycles original, but it's part of the culture in US. David, why people change everything on the US? They want to modify everything.
I guess I've kind of been the same way. It's NSS, nothing stays stock. So it helps you to keep things a little custom. You put
It's more expensive, but again, I mean, I really like this exhaust, the way it looks, titanium, original. But Yoshimura, I mean, I always wanted to have a Yoshimura exhaust, you know, so.
They're great exhausts. And no, I mean, it's one of those things, you make it custom. You know, a bike is kind of a representation of you, and you ride it and you have your own little style. You put things that you like on it. And this is obviously a performance upgrade, and should sound very good.
Yeah, I mean, on the collector's perspective, as original the motorcycle is the better. But this is going to be the only part that is not going to be stuck on the bike. So I'm okay with that.
And you'll keep that, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Taking off 19 years of heat. And we're missing one.
Bye-bye, titanium. Hello, Yoshimura.
So another thing that's very important when doing these slip-ons, it's a very simple process. Obviously, it's just 4 nuts that you remove on the stock exhaust, plus this one here up on the rear sets, and then it slides right off. A lot of people go ahead and just slap the slip-on on, but for just a few dollars, there's a copper gasket that goes right here. It's kind of hard to see the old one because obviously it's been baked on, but this will help just prevent any exhaust leaks out of the baffle here. So we'll go ahead and replace that and slip the new one on. We've got about 19 years worth of wear, tear, and heat there. So we're gonna put a brand new one on with the Yoshimura slip-on here.
Cool. Wow. What a beautiful Yoshimura. Made in US.
One of my friends, you know, we were talking the other day, and we were always been, you know, like to do our own things, change our own oil, work on bikes ever since we were kids. And I saw this thing the other day online, which was pretty funny. And it was somebody asking us like, man, where did you learn to do all these things, change oil and do all this stuff? And it was like, well, you know, I grew up poor, so I had to learn to do it. Otherwise it was never going to get done.
That's fun.
But it's fun. I've always enjoyed doing this kind of stuff.
So one of the things that we noticed about installing the new Yoshimura, that, you know, now we have these lights in the middle. So unfortunately, I don't like to change things, but I'm gonna have to remove all these and make it, you know, look slimmer. The good thing about this bike is tall in the back, so it's gonna look really aggressive once we remove this, and it's gonna look really cool. Now let's go on a ride to try this iron hose with the new Yoshimura exhaust. After David and I rode both motorcycles, we got to the conclusion that the ZX12R is a more comfortable bike. You could even do touring with that bike, and the ZX12R is more like a racing motorcycle. That's the purpose. But it's fun to compare and see bikes, and we love the sound of the ZX12R after the Yoshimura exhaust was installed. I remember the first time I saw a ZX12R in the year 2000. I was in a gas station and I saw this guy coming in with a ZX12, and I was very impressed with the size of the tire. That was a 200, bigger than any other type in similar bikes. The other thing I noticed is that you could move in the third gear the motorcycle, so the power of this motorcycle was incredible compared to anything seen before. The Kawasaki ZX12R was the fastest production bike in the world since 2000 to 2006. thank you for coming back to Motorcycle Brothers. We enjoy very much doing this video and we hope to see you back. Please don't forget to subscribe and like.